The White House says Israel has agreed to 4-hour military pauses in Northern Gaza each day. This, when implemented, allows civilians to flee the besieged Strip and facilitate movement of the much-needed aid trucks. US President Joe Biden has welcomed the pauses, calling it a step in the right direction, but said that there is no scope of a formal ceasefire yet. Plumes of smoke rose from buildings following fresh explosions in northern Gaza. Gaza officials said that Israel launched airstrikes near at least 3 hospitals, further endangering a health system swarmed with casualties and thousands of displaced people. The month-old Israeli military campaign to wipe out Hamas has so far devastated Gazan hospitals, with medical supplies, clean water, and fuel to power generators running out. At least 14 people were killed after Israeli forces raided the Palestinian city of Jenin and fought an hours-long battle with gunmen. This was one of the heaviest clashes in the West Bank in months. Rubble and debris was strewn across the streets of Jenin following the raid. Now, gunfire sounded for hours as Israeli troops fought well-armed militants in the streets of Jenin and its adjacent refugee camp as well. The Palestinian Health Ministry says that a 15-year-old boy was also killed during the raids. International aid to Gaza from Qatar and Saudi Arabia arrived at the El Arish airport in Egypt. The airport is 45 kilometers from the Rafah border crossing into the Palestinian territory. 4 flights flew into Egypt with 180 tons of aid, but aid organizations continue to express frustration at being unable to transport crucial aid to the 2.4 million people living inside the Gaza Strip. The people continue to get only 1 liter of water per person per day compared to a need of 10 liters. An unidentified drone hit a civilian building in the southern Israeli city of Eliad. The drone caused light damage, and footage recorded by an eyewitness showed people running in the Red Sea port city while air sirens blared across. Now, Israel's military said that Yemen's Houthi movement fired ballistic missiles towards the city. The military said that the identity of the drone that struck the building in the city was under review. Now, there are currently no reports of any injuries. Hundreds of protesters rallied demanding an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. The protest was held outside the district office of Representative Clark in New York. Protesters wrote the names of over 4,000 Palestinian children killed by the Israeli military. Protesters entered BlackRock's offices in New York's Hudson Yards. Demonstrators accused the asset manager of being complicit in the war on Gaza, chanting, "BlackRock, you can't hide. We charge you with genocide." Demonstrators held a banner in the lobby at the company's building, which read, and I'm quoting here, "BlackRock, you can't hide. We charge you with genocide." Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau condemned violence after shots were fired at 2 Jewish schools in Montreal overnight. Clashes between students at a university also occurred in the same city a day before. Police are investigating overnight shootings at the 2 Jewish schools in Montreal. Both schools reported finding a bullet hole in their front doors. There were no injuries and it is not clear if the incidents were linked. Just on Wednesday, a violent altercation at a university between people aligned with opposing sides of the war in Gaza resulted in injuries and an arrest. Israeli military released footage showing strikes on alleged Hezbollah targets in Lebanon. The Israel Defense Forces, also known as the IDF, said that it was retaliation for attacks by the militant group towards Israeli territory on the previous day. The footage depicted fighter jet strikes on Hezbollah infrastructure and technological equipment. Now, Hezbollah has been exchanging fire with Israeli forces across the border since the bombardment of Gaza began. Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi's wife, Jamila Al-Molhoda, has once again sparked controversy in Iran due to her political activism. Politicians and members of the public criticized her for writing to French President Emmanuel Macron's wife, urging the French First Lady to ask her husband to press for a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip. Unfazed by the criticism for her effort, she said that she was writing to 40 other European First Ladies as well. Russia claims it has repelled multiple Ukrainian attacks, even as Ukraine said that it launched attacks on Russian command posts and intelligence facilities. Now, Russia also said that its forces had thwarted attacks by the Ukrainian army in many cities, as per the defense ministry. The Russian air defense system shot down a MiG-29 fighter and intercepted many HIMARS rockets and drones of the Ukrainian army. Top cabinet officials of India and the United States held talks stressing the need to further strengthen their friendship. To deal with urgent geopolitical challenges, the annual 2+2 dialogue between U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken and Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, and of course their Indian counterparts, Foreign Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar and Defense Minister Rajnath Singh. The meeting took place on Friday. It aims to boost defense cooperation and align the policy objectives of the two countries in the Indo-Pacific region. Although Washington is preoccupied with the wars in Gaza and Ukraine, these talks are expected to focus more on taking forward the India-US defense and strategic relationship. The United States carried out an airstrike on a weapons warehouse in eastern Syria, which was allegedly being used by Iranian-backed militias. The strike was in retaliation after a growing number of attacks on bases housing U.S. troops in the region. Now, during the strike, two U.S. F-15 fighter jets dropped multiple bombs on a weapons storage facility. Nearly half of Democrats disapprove of how President Joe Biden is handling the Israel-Gaza conflict, as per a new poll. The poll reveals that 50% of Democrats approve of how Biden has navigated the conflict, while 46% disapprove. Now, this highlights the divisions among the Democrat Party on U.S. support to Israel. And earlier, a poll conducted in August found that around 57% of Democrats approved of his handling of the conflict and 40% disapproved. UK's Interior Minister Suella Braverman is in trouble for her comments on a planned demonstration in London on Saturday's Armistice Day. Now, Braverman had criticised the police for not refusing permission to a pro-Palestinian march. UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is now facing mounting pressure to sack Braverman after she suggested that officers play favourites when policing protests. In an article in the Times, brave women called the rallies calling for a ceasefire in Gaza as hate marches. She further claimed that unnamed police chiefs appear to care more about avoiding flak from tackling such protests. Up to 25,000 garment workers clashed with police in Bangladesh over wages protests, rejected a government-offered pay rise, which forced the closure of at least 100 factories outside Dhaka. A government-appointed panel raised wages on Tuesday by 56% for nearly 4 million garment factory workers. But workers are seeking a near tripling of their monthly wages. Protesters gathered outside the Socialists' headquarters in Madrid after Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez secured the backing of Catalan's separatist party, Junts, to form a government. Now, the protests were held for the fourth night in a row. A law granting amnesty to those prosecuted over Catalonia's attempt to secede from Spain was included in the deal. Sanchez's conservative opponents have accused him of putting the rule of law in Spain on the line for his own political gain. An amnesty could exculpate as many as 1,400 activists and politicians involved in the attempt to separate Catalonia from Spain. South Korea's capital, Seoul, conducted pest control measures ahead of the country's nationwide exterminate bed bug campaign. This after reports of suspected infestations in the country. Now, Seoul Mayor also held a meeting on bed bugs with experts. The city office fumigated seats on subway trains and hot-stained residential areas, where 3 cases have already been reported earlier this week. The government announced a 4-week campaign with inspections of public facilities and pest control measures, which are due to begin next. In South Korea, about 30 cases of suspected infestations have been reported nationwide. Scientists have rediscovered a long-lost mammal species more than 60 years after it was last recorded. The animal is described as having the spines of a hedgehog, the snout of an anteater, and the feet of a mole. It was found in Indonesia's Cyclops Mountains, and the mammal's long-beaked echidna is also known as Sir David's. It is named after British naturalist David Attenborough. Ruins of a large public thermal bath have been discovered in Morocco. It was found and it is around 1.2 square mile UNESCO World Heritage Site. It has a footprint almost 5 times the size of Pompeii. With a surface area of at least 2,000 square meters, it is the largest known thermal establishment from ancient Morocco. Researchers concentrated on a zone within the Chela site that was completely untouched since the 1960s. Overnight rain brought respite to the Indian capital of New Delhi. Rains were recorded in the surrounding cities of Noida and Gurugram as well. Showers cleared off smog in the region, giving relief to millions of residents. People who came out in the morning said that they were feeling better as compared to previous days. But AQI remains in the severe category. The Japanese government has announced a supplementary budget of approximately $13 billion to bolster its semiconductor industry. Japan, traditionally a key player in chip-making tools and materials, has faced challenges in manufacturing competitiveness in recent years. The funds will be directed towards supporting domestic chip makers through capacity building subsidies. Notably, part of the allocation is expected to benefit Taiwanese chip maker TSMC and the chip foundry venture Rapidus. Now, this move reflects a global trend as countries aim to enhance control over the chip supply chain. Britain's economy stagnated in the third quarter, official data showed on Friday, slowing from modest expansion in the previous 3 months and sparking recession fears as high interest rates took their toll. Now, gross domestic product showed no growth in the July-September period. The Office for National Statistics, said in a statement, after a 0.2% expansion in the second quarter. Meta Platforms, the parent company of Facebook, has entered into a preliminary deal with Tencent Holdings to sell a new, affordable virtual reality headset in China. Now, this move is part of Meta's strategy to re-enter the Chinese market, where Facebook and Instagram are currently blocked. Tencent will be the exclusive seller of Meta's VR headsets in China, with sales expected to commence in the late 2024. Now, the report did not specify the headset's potential price.